Hey guys, so we finally have documents that detail what Bryan Kohberger told authorities after he was arrested at his parents' house in Pennsylvania. I'm going to read the documents that have just been released to you guys, so take a listen. The document reads that approximately at 2 o'clock in the morning on December 30th, 2022, after Kohberger was arrested, he was brought to an interview room and recorded on a built-in video system. This is a summary of the interview with Bryan Kohberger and not a verbatim transcript of it. The two detectives read Kohberger his Miranda rights advisements. Kohberger said he understood his rights, and then they began collecting his personal information. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger about the SWAT operation at the house, to which Kohberger replied he was concerned about his parents and his dog. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger if he was going to Washington State University, to which he replied he was. We made small talk with Kohberger about sports for some time. Kohberger stated he didn't follow Washington State University football much, but was a baseball fan. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger if he had only been at Washington State University for one semester. Kohberger confirmed this and said he came to Washington State with his father on July 1st. Kohberger then went on to say he was a first-year PhD student in criminal justice and criminology. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger what the process was to apply for a PhD. Kohberger stated he applied to two places, UC Irvine and Washington State University. Kohberger said he was going to graduate with his master's in criminal justice from DeSales and was inspired. Kohberger then asked if it was okay to engage in small talk like we were, to which we replied it was. After briefly mentioning he was strengthened by the fact his mother and father were okay, Kohberger said he applied to the two aforementioned schools because they did not require the GRE exam. Kohberger then spoke about the GRE for a brief time and then said he was accepted by Washington State. Detective Gilbertson then asked Kohberger what led him down the road of becoming a professor. Kohberger stated it was because he loved being in college and stated knowledge was far more important to him than money. Kohberger added Washington State had a good program to study under and then said, "You guys know all about this more than likely." Kohberger then asked questions about University of Idaho and other Idaho universities before stating he didn't know much about Idaho or Washington and had not left the tri-state area much. Kohberger then returned to speaking about his focus on learning and how he thought he could obtain his doctorate degree. Kohberger then said he recently returned home to see family. Detective Gilbertson then asked Kohberger about his time at DeSales. Kohberger spoke for some time about his time at Northampton Community College and DeSales. Kohberger then spoke about how he became interested in criminal justice and stated he thought about being a police officer but did not want to make that commitment unless he was absolutely sure. Kohberger then continued to speak about his education and universities. Kohberger also spoke more about the process to get into a PhD program and how competitive it can be. Detective Gilbertson then asked Kohberger about his move to Washington. He said he drove across the country and wanted the challenge of driving cross country and experiencing it with his dad. Kohberger then said he took a different route back with his father for Christmas break to avoid snow. Kohberger spoke about his travels and the risks of such travels in winter. Kohberger then began to speak about the beauty of the environment and its relationship to God and a higher power. We spoke about this for some time, and Kohberger said he was raised Christian but was always a skeptic except when confronted with the beauty of the natural world. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger if he had ever been to the Pacific Northwest, and Kohberger said no. I asked Kohberger if he and his father made any stops along their way back to Pennsylvania. He told me they visited Colorado, but the main goal was to just drive. Kohberger then told a story about seeing an unmarked police car near Kansas City speed up behind him, catch up to another vehicle, turn on its emergency lights, then drive away. Kohberger thought this was strange and was unsure why it occurred. Detective Gilbertson then asked Kohberger about the job he mentioned. Kohberger stated he was a teaching assistant. He then talked about how busy he was and how the funding package that comes along with being a teaching assistant is what makes the extra work worth it. Kohberger then discussed ongoing projects with Washington State University PD and Pullman PD. Kohberger spoke more about how being a TA is essentially assisting the professors and the department. Kohberger stated he did not get to assist with teaching with the exception of assisting with office hours. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger if he would be a TA again next semester, and Kohberger replied he would. Kohberger then stated he understood why we were engaging in small talk but would appreciate it if we explained to him what he was doing there. Gilbertson asked Kohberger why he thought we were there. He said he wanted Detective Gilbertson to tell him. Detective Gilbertson said we were there because of what occurred in Moscow, but did not provide any further detail. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger if he watched the news. Kohberger said, "I watched the news." Detective Gilbertson then asked Kohberger why he thought I looked familiar. Kohberger said he wasn't sure and stated I had a familiar face and looked like someone he used to know. Detective Gilbertson then said we were there there because of what happened in November just off the University of Idaho campus. Detective Gilbertson asked Kohberger if he knew what that was, to which Kohberger replied, "Of course." When prompted to elaborate, Kohberger said it was the incident we had been investigating for, quote, "How long has it been?" Kohberger said there were probably several incidents, and then said he was aware of a homicide because of a Washington State University alert he received. Detective Gilbertson asked when Kohberger received the alert. Kohberger said he wasn't sure but thought it was sometime the previous month. Detective Gilbertson confirmed that was why they were there, and if Kohberger wanted to talk about that. Kohberger replied, quote, "Well, I think I would need a lawyer." Kohberger then asked if we would explain to him what we were there for specifically, and added he was tired. Detective Gilbertson again stated we were investigating the homicides of the 4 students, and that's why we had questions and things we hoped Kohberger would help us understand. Kohberger sat back and said he had the utmost respect for law enforcement, but stated it was a constitutional right to speak to an attorney. Detective Gilbertson affirmed this. Kohberger then re-engaged and said the only thing he heard from Moscow was an alert that came to his phone. Kohberger then said he wanted to talk to an attorney. Detective Gilbertson said we would stop now because Kohberger wanted to speak to an attorney. Kohberger then asked where his parents were and where his dog was. Kohberger re-engaged again and asked what questions we would have for him. Detective Gilbertson then asked Kohberger again if he understood his rights and asked specifically what Kohberger wished. Kohberger asked what specifically we wanted to talk to him about and the reason. I told Kohberger he invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and we were not going to ask him any further questions. Kohberger asked again for the reason he was there, but added he would like to talk to an attorney. At this point, we concluded our interview with Kohberger and left the room. Now remember, at the beginning of this document, it said that this interview was recorded, so we should actually get to see and hear this at some point. We also know that Kohberger was lying in this interview. He said he only knew about the homicides because of an alert he got on his phone, but we know that Kohberger was actually searching up the crimes and reading about them on the news. I also think that Kohberger was trying to pull one over the detective's eyes. He was saying that he wanted to speak to a lawyer, but continued asking them questions. If the detectives continued asking him questions, that would have messed this entire thing up. Kohberger knew that, and I think that he was being very strategic with the fact that he said he wants a lawyer, but was continuing to ask them questions to get answers out of him. You guys know I'm going to continue reading these, and as I uncover things, I will be sure to break them down and read them to you guys, so make sure to follow. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments.